Sandbox episode, we're excited to talk to somebody whose work we have admired for a long, long time, and he also happens to be a longtime listener of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to illustrator, senior art director at Scientific Games, artist Dave Pryor.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
You're here.
I like the energy you brought. Holy cow.
You just came up like 50%.
Such a pro.
We have to do a lot of meetings at work, so what can I say?
Man, that's pro level. Because like right before we started, he's like, I just feel like I'm kind of like a boring guy. Hey guys, how's it going?
Now I'm on.
I love it. All right, so Dave, first of all, thanks for being a longtime listener, supporter of the show. And this conversation has been a long time coming because we have been a fan of yours for quite some time. But start us off letting everybody know the quick Wikipedia page about who you are.
Okay, my name's Dave Pryor. I've been in the art and animation business now for going on almost 26 years. Started off working for Warner Brothers Animation, doing a lot of their TV show series in the 90s. Did a lot of commercial animation, and in the last 16 years or so, I've worked at Scientific Games, which is part of Williams Gaming, which became WMS, and also is now part of Bally, who do all the pinball machines, and now we do a lot of slot gaming. Been there for about almost 16 years. And on the side, I do a lot of gallery shows and try to keep up my illustration craft by being part of, social media and all types of events that come about.
Yeah. So when you say that you've done some illustration work with some galleries, I think you're being a little modest, just because I see some of the. Not just the work that you've done that's incredible, but some of the names that you've worked with, as well as your latest piece that you dove into, and maybe we'll talk about maybe a little bit later down the road. But that papercraft piece that you did of Shape of Water, that got some pretty good acclaim from some pretty high up people. Why don't you tell us the story about that?
So, well, I loved Shape of Water. That was a Guillermo del Toro show that Gallery Nucleus had. And I knew I wanted to do something special for the show. And it's interesting because they give you the list of all the shows you can do. And the show deadline is coming up. And it's like, well, I want to see Shape of Water so I don't rule it out. So I had to see an early show right as it came out. It was really hard to see in the beginning because it was only showing at various art cinemas and whatnot. So I had to drive out for that, and I loved it. So I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be the movie I'm going to choose. And I wanted to do something special and new and original for the gallery itself. So I tried my hand at doing papercraft of, what do you call them? The asset. I believe that's what he's called in the movie. Yeah. And so I did a bit of a sketch, and I think you can see this on my blog if anyone cares to go back and look. Step-by-step process. Yeah, okay. And then that was fun. I did the digital piece on my iPad and worked it all up. And then basically just a trip to the store to look for textures and what could actually make it feel special. And I wasn't even committed to doing it paper until after experimenting. And it was like, after I felt it was working out or that I liked where it was going, then I committed to it, wrapped it all up and sent it off to the gallery.
So how was that experience then? How many times had you worked in papercraft before?
I believe it's my first piece. I might have done like a little test piece at work. We'll do some creative things on the side, just putting things together. That felt more like paper mache or something, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, no joke, the papers that you chose, like all the textures you got, are just fantastic.
Thank you.
They're right. They're the right things. Like, it's just good.
That's a heck of a platform for a heck of a subject matter to test the waters. Pun not.
You meant to do that. I know.
Goodness. I would be like, oh, I'm doing this for the Guillermo del Toro show. Yeah, I'm going to do something tried and true.
Right.
But instead you took a risk. And I think it paid off in a big, big way because the guy who plays the asset.
Doug Jones.
Yeah. He was there. He was able to see it and experience it. And man, that's to me seems like a really, really cool opportunity for you to demonstrate through your art to a person who did an art that you admire, and you guys get to admire each other's work. That's just always
absolutely special. Yeah, you don't get that opportunity very often. And I'm in Chicago, so I wasn't able to go to the LA show, but I was able to live vicariously through the internet, as we often do living in the Midwest. So that was great, and it really made everything feel really special. And seeing him with other artists that I know, and among all these pieces. And that show did lean heavily towards Shape of Water too, so it touched a lot of people.
Yeah.
So okay, so you mentioned that this was like your first paper craft kind of piece, and you got asked to be part of the the show. Is that part of your personality where you'll go out on a limb and try something that you're not maybe familiar with in situations like that? I
do enjoy mixing it up a little bit. I don't know if you get that from the style you see. I might have a few styles I go to.
Sure.
But I do enjoy experimentation. Yeah. And, I think we're driven more to experimentation nowadays because we connect to so many additional people online.
Yeah.
And, you see stuff you like. And so you're just looking for that venue where you could try it out or test the waters.
I think that's the difference, though, because, and maybe it just comes with experience, because like you said, you've been kind of in this business for a while, but like Andrew said, you took that chance or tried something new when the stakes were high, so to speak, I guess. And not many people will do that. Like Andrew said, you'll kind of lean to maybe what you know and not go for the new thing. But you did, and it worked out. And I think that just is a testament to just maybe your attitude on approaching your craft, maybe.
Thank you. I know what to say. I didn't feel pressure. I didn't feel like, oh, this might not pay off. But you hit a point in every piece of art, usually where you don't like it.
Right.
And then you see it come together. It's like, okay, this was all worth it, and it was worth all the worry.
Right.
But I did do a paper piece after that I really wasn't as happy with. So rest assured, it isn't like it's super easy to do.
So about that, for as long as you've been in this industry, and your work is great. I mean, if anybody hasn't, go ahead and pull up Dave's work while you're listening to this, so you have some context for what we're talking about if you haven't already seen it. When you are working on a piece, so you just made the comment that you have that you reach that part where it's like full mental saturation, and you've seen it too many times. The joke was funny the first time, but now I've heard it 100 times, it's not funny anymore. So is that a key for you? Like when it comes back around and you start appreciating it again, or like you hit that moment of spark again, is that like an indicator for you that you've gotten the piece to where it needs to be? Like, do you always feel that sense of like I've pushed through with every project, or are there some projects that you just never get there and you have to turn it in basically?
Yeah, there's things you got to throw away sometimes. And it's hard to know when that moment is, because you know that something is not going to look good for sometimes a long period of time. So do you get to that point, and when do you decide to throw it away? I was actually just working on a piece the other day that I decided to start over and work up a new idea for, because it was a good idea, but my layout was crap right from the get-go, and I just didn't call it. So I kept working. It's like, okay, I can keep doing this, or I could just do the new thing that popped into my mind.
It was dead on arrival, but you kept giving it CPR because you just didn't want to give in.
Well, you don't know when the good idea is going to come to you when you're working on it. So it's like, okay, that's the thing to fix it. And sometimes if that's not coming into play, it might be better to start over. My old boss told me that you have to do like 1,000 terrible drawings before you start doing the good ones. And the bad ones still sneak in, even though you've done 1,000 already.
Hopefully a little less, but they still sneak in.
Yeah.
So, but on that, so moving forward, one thing you mentioned before we started recording is how much you enjoy deadlines. So we're talking about having to complete something and having to be done with it. A deadline would mean, and this is for a lot of artists listening right now, the idea of a deadline is a foreign concept, and I know that. Like, I know that all of you don't understand getting things turned in on time. That's fine. Dave, you do. So how do you? What is it that you love about deadlines? And then if you feel like that idea hasn't come to you on a piece by the deadline, how do you resolve that internally?
Well, yes, it's true. So if you're getting to the deadline and the piece is not great, I say you just live with it and you still turn it, you still get it there. The Gallery 1988 work I've done, I have not loved every piece that I've done, but sometimes it just comes to, well, tomorrow is the last mail-in day and I got to get it in, or else just, not do it. But I'd rather do it than to not do it. And I do enjoy the challenges and things that are posed online that you take part in. Mm-hmm. So I think I think Andrew, you took part in the quick Mickey drawing. Mm-hmm. That was like, oh, here's a posed challenge right away, which is super exciting. Just to be given something new to do. And it reinvigorates you. And on the day that the challenge was made, I had something else I'm sure I was supposed to be doing. But that took precedence. It's just like, okay, I'm going to do it. Yeah. And if I have any advice to give, it's more if you you have a lot of deadlines, and what some artists will do, and I've done this and I'm trying to get better at it, is you'll have deadlines on projects and you'll procrastinate because you're not excited at that moment. So you'll feel guilty. You won't want to do something else. So you'll just sometimes you'll go through a day without doing anything. So instead of doing nothing, it's better just to say, yeah, I know I have the deadline, but I'd rather do this. Do that other piece of art instead. And maybe you'll finish that. And then the next day you'll be able to move on to what you're supposed to be doing.
That's sound advice from a guy who's well-versed in this industry. So if you're listening to this and you're wanting to be in this industry, heed that little nugget. Type it down, jot it down, put it up on your mirror in lipstick, whatever you need to do to remember that, because that's a really smart piece of advice. Because sometimes the overwhelming sense of having to get something done is paralyzing, and to just do something separate get your mind off of the overwhelming feeling, and then you can just open up the creativity again. I think that's super useful. So let's take a step back, or maybe a few steps back, and let's go back to your Warner Brother days. What you said that you did some work on some of the 90s cartoons. What work specifically did you do, and what properties were you able to work with?
I started out with Tiny Toons. So the studio I was working for was doing the Christmas special at the time. So that was actually my first paid animation gig. And that was when I was a junior in college. So worked there for the summer and then finished up college and then came back, and they were doing the Animaniacs contract. So they did many shows in the first season of Animaniacs.
Cool.
And Animaniacs is coming back, isn't it? Did I hear that it's coming back?
There's a reboot. I don't know of any details, and as I understand, a lot of the original creatives maybe aren't coming back. I'm not sure, but I'm keeping my ears peeled to see if something's going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to bridge that then to what you're doing now. You're working with this game company, and sounds like it's got several arms and several facets to it, but one of those is Bally's, which makes the pinball machines. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who are unaware, pinball is a machine where there's a metal ball that shoots up, but each of these machines is tailored to a specific IP and it's tailored to a specific property. So do you, as the senior art director, do you get to work with the licensors on what these things look like, and then do you get to actually do some of the designs on some of these properties?
Yeah, we do. We have several licensors. Warner Brothers has actually been one of our ongoing licensors for a long time, and because we do slot gaming, we'll do a lot of nostalgic themes like Wizard of Oz and Willy Wonka are some of the big ones. So we're doing kind of brand new content with these themes, and we'll take new visions through the Chocolate River and things like that.
Sure.
We've had the Marvel license. This was kind of prior to the Disney buyout of Marvel. They're getting further away from slot business, but you'll still find a few Iron Man games out there. And then the big license we're working with right now is James Bond. And
Nice.
we have the rights to do just about every movie in the lineup. And we're going to be starting to put those machines out a little later this year.
So how, we don't talk to a lot of people that have the time experience that you have, and then also the variety. And
Right.
so it's kind of hard to like pick a point and focus on
I know
it.
there's quite a smorgasbord to pick from. We may just have to kind of find one, hone into it, and then do another episode again sometime in the near future.
But I'm actually gonna so looking at the papercraft. So that was something new that you did. The idea of the deadlines, participating in these like Mermaid. I see you're doing that now, and then the Quickie Mickey and all that kind of stuff. How do you stay improving your craft? Like, how do you, looking at the illustration that you do, or how do you get better at that, especially when you've already invested so much time and you really, if I see something pop up in my feed, I can pretty easily tell if it's something from Dave Pryor. Like, it's pretty obvious to me. But how do you get better at that? Where are the points of advice, or how do you challenge yourself personally to keep deepening that after this much time?
Well, if we're talking to younger folks, of course, it's like staying at it. And actually, in the Animaniacs days, I mean, I was really just working at my craft at work the whole time, and my own personal work was non-existent. So, I mean, 10 years went by, and I did nothing for myself. Then what ended up happening is, we got that studio closed down, and it was kind of like, well, I'd like the opportunity to do another film. So I set out my sights to do that, my own personal piece. And that took about, 5 years to just do that that bit. I wanted to learn Flash, and I had all sorts of goals in mind. So I said, I need a film to work on. And then every night I would work on that after work, and things like that. So with the internet now, like I was mentioning, you see stuff that inspires you all the time. And having worked this long in the industry, you start to forget about why you drew in the first place, or what kind of made you happy, or I don't know, it sounds kind of sappy, but it's kind of like, well, what do I enjoy about being an artist, and really just kind of more focusing on that. Sure. So that all kind of plays into whether it's good or not. I'm still doing what I'm enjoying doing, and they're not all going to be hits. It's like, oh, that was okay. And a lot of stuff I usually just post it anyway. It's like every artist is really critical. And, of course I could stand to be much better if I study harder, take more courses, work on my light values, whatnot. Sure. But there's a lot of it that I do just because I enjoy doing it. So I don't get as wrapped up in, hey, this has to be a masterpiece.
So what is that then that you've identified that you personally enjoy from it?
It's just that process of like, hey, here I am. I'm just going to sit down, and then a couple hours later, I'm actually going to have something tangible. And
so it's the finishing.
That's fun. Just to have gone through it. I don't know if you guys saw the exercise I did in February. Was like draw an expression every day. I'd never really thought to do that before, but one artist was putting the challenge out there, so I'm like, that sounds very interesting. So I started it. A couple days late, but I've caught up. And it's like, wow, this is actually something I'm really enjoying. I never would have thought of it myself, but now I can kind of dig in and get through all these various expressions. The challenge of trying to do different ones for expressions that would have been similar, where an artist would have said, well, I'll make him confident and stubborn look the same, but trying to think of those little subtleties that really do create a division between those two expressions. Those challenges and learning a little something about myself is always exciting, I don't know. I guess I just, every part of it I do really enjoy. Seeing the work that my friends have done each day, what they post, and just seeing, it's kind of like we're in this big journey together now more than we ever have been.
Sure.
So that's okay. So that's where I wanted to take this next question anyway, is this idea of community. And we talked to a lot of people over the 4 years we've been doing this. We've talked to a lot of people who are very active in the community and are contributors to it. But I would put you on the short list of people who are active contributors to and lovers of this design community.
Short list, long title.
What?
It's a short list with a long title.
Short list, long title. The business card folds out, but it's fine. It's a trifold. But I think when I think about you and I look at what you do, you have played in multiple sandboxes, right? You have worked with several different galleries, studios, independent things, and you are a supporter of the community. On top of that, you're incredibly open about yourself and your studio. You've taken us, if you follow your blog, you've taken us on a tour through your studio, and you're very, very good at crediting the artists that you enjoy and that you support and that are part of your inspirational community or whatever. So there's a question here. I promise this isn't all just accolades. All right. We'll rein it in. What is it that is your drive to be such a community advocate and that openness?
It's the adage of like treat people the way you would like to be treated, right? We're putting work out there, and we love to see how people react to it. It's important to see a comment on what someone liked about something, and it does drive you forward to that next piece.
Yeah. Beyond just the like.
The like is great.
Fun.
That's awesome too. But I like when it gets into a little bit more of a conversation. And I try to do the same back if I can. If there's something I do, if I can point out that I exceptionally, like that's what I gravitated towards in that piece. Or say something funny, whatever it is, because we're really just trying to become friends here, in this, distant. I don't know where these people live or who they are, but you're just trying to be a good person.
Yeah.
So, and that's the reason someone posted their art to begin with is to get that response, right? So. That's the idea with just trying to contribute and liking people that maybe are not. They're just budding. They're just starting out in art, right? So, hey, they made the effort to connect, and they're saying things. So, yeah, I'm gonna follow you back, and I'm gonna look at your journey and see how you do over time, just because they are adding to that community, and that's what it's for.
For the person that's starting out, what do you most often see them do wrong? Like, if you could give a piece of correction of hey, this will serve you really well if you would just catch this early.
Like a blanketed, blanketed advice.
I guess it could be thinking that they've done enough and oh, okay, this is enough. Well, we do a lot of course, portfolio interviews at work, and I like to be honest with what we would be looking for, but not to be crippling about any kind of advice. It's just work on this. Just work, if this is what you really want to do. And people many times will say, what should I do, 2D animation or 3D animation? And the answer is always, what do you enjoy doing? So not to force yourself into something just because you think years from now that's where you're going to end up. And it's interesting because there are a lot more and more younger people who are just in high school or even grade school sometimes will be asking about what they need to decide on right now. And I think there's enough time, for those folks to they're so lucky to be starting at such a young age too. So,
yeah,
it's kind of just have fun. What you enjoy doing will come out. And if at the end of the day you're doing, let's say they're drawing for a couple of years and then they just it's just not fun for me anymore. Well, thank goodness, then just decide that and do whatever else you were meant to do. That's fine too.
Great. So, on the note of things that you enjoy, I know one of them is animation. Now, before this episode started, I didn't know your background very well. I've seen a lot of stuff in your feed. When you say animation, how do you mean it? Because there's a couple different images that come to mind. So what part of animation is it that you really enjoy?
Well, I do 2D animation for the most part. So it is, it sounds hokey, but it's bringing things to life. So here's my illustration. What is that little bit? And lately I've done just tiny little snippets of animations just because I can get them done in a day or two. And again, it's okay, that was satisfying. Now I'll move on to the other thing. Because at this point in my life, I enjoy doing the animation, but the illustration stuff is right there too. And I don't want to get too bogged down. Although I do have plans to do something a little bit bigger at some point.
Nice.
I don't know. It's hard to say right now in my life when I'm going to cram it in. But
Dave and I are making a stop motion film together.
It's a nice little tease. And Dave is actually using Patrick's physical body and animating it.
Right. Stuffing it with clay first, though. It's going to be very interesting.
I think you'll be surprised how clay-like it already is.
Like clay on a very hot day.
Oh, like melty clay.
Like Muckman.
Ask McKenzie.
It is like
Anyway,
we've diverted.
do you get to do a lot of animation in your day-to-day, or is it mainly just where you decide personally to?
So I do have the ability to choose some animation projects, and I am doing some animation in a game right now, which is very enjoyable. I do mostly, I'm the director for the studio. We have a few hundred folks worldwide. So my primary thing is working with the art leads and looking through the games that we do produce, and really just trying to create a nice, happy, productive atmosphere for everybody there.
Right.
And then second comes the design work, the animation, and all that stuff.
Okay.
So I'm gonna shift us into our final questions because we want to be aware of your time and be respectful of that, and then be cognizant.
Doesn't this go so
else.
quickly?
This one,
It does.
It's
just because there's so
many
much
questions
to pull from.
Yeah, there's so many questions left unasked. That's the problem. So mine is going to go along the lines of what you were just saying a second ago. I think you said that the thing that you love most is bringing things to life. And one thing that I see from your work is your ability to capture expressions, and not tiny expressions, but big expressions in a single piece of artwork. And I'll just use let me just use one of your pieces as an example. The piece that you did with Squared Co. that you did for the 30th anniversary of Princess Bride. You look at that piece that you did, and every single character, not only do you obviously know who the character is right away and you connect with them, even though it's a cartoon version of them, it's not like you're trying to, nail the likeness, but each character has their own unique set of expressions that absolutely tells their story. So what is it that you have to do that you do day in and day out to practice that expression, and how long does it take you to nail those when you're doing these illustrations?
Well, that illustration that harkens back to my Warner's style. That is one of the few things I might go back to, just in the eyes and whatnot. And of course, doing layout and posing for animation, the characters are always in dialogue and they're having conversations, and making that eye contact and everything is very important. I enjoyed that piece because it was more of a composition, a tall composition.
Right.
It was, when I had the idea, it was like, oh, of course, that's exactly what I need to do. They're on the cliffs of insanity here, and it's got to be tall. You got to see that rope right down the center, and then it's that connection of everybody hanging on and looking at that threat right below.
Right.
It was a challenge. Well, the challenge is you wonder when you're the artist is like, okay, so I'm changing the position where she was in the movie and kind of putting these guys all in various places. They're all strapped to his back, but I'm taking artistic license here,
right,
and putting them just where I felt they needed to be to draw that connection to the, everybody else that's in their relation in the scene.
Well, you nailed it. In Indigo's face, I think, the juxtaposition between Indigo's face and her face, because they're very close in the composition, love it. I think you absolutely killed it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so for my final question, I'm going to pull this back into games because that's what I do. I want to know, so the work that you do now is not maybe the gaming that we talk about on the show. It's a little bit different, and it's a super interesting section of gaming because it's so popular and so prevalent, and it's almost in more places than the regular gaming that we talk about. And so how has the style, the art style, and the I guess the designing for those types of games, how has that changed from maybe when you got into it to kind of what what those players are experiencing now. Like how has, I guess, society or our content ingestion changed that design style?
It's definitely gotten into many other places, not just at the casinos, let's say, but in online games, and it's kind of everywhere. You know, they're the top games on the Apple Store, right?
Right.
So I will tell you my history there. When I first started working in these games, I thought I would be at the company maybe 2 months because, hey, here I'm going into a field that has no narrative.
Right.
Little did I know that because of the variety of the themes, we do a ton of games, like hundreds of games a year practically. Yeah. And think of them like mini social games, if you will. Mm-hmm. Some are way bigger than others. But we do so many, and the variety was really it couldn't compare to what I was doing in the TV business because I was able to jump to all these various things very quickly.
Yeah,
sure.
So even though it is different and it isn't storytelling per se, there's still some attract moments and things that go on in these games.
Right.
So you do get a little bit of that. You get to dip your toe in a lot of different waters with realism and cartoon stuff and. It's always a challenge, and 16 years later, I would have never thought I'd still be working in the same industry.
Sure.
But the other thing that was really nice about it is I was able to make a decent living, regular work hours, able to participate in all these other things off the side. So it was good for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Do you have? Looking back over your short career, do you have a piece that you would say is especially special to you?
It would have to be, if you haven't seen my film that I did, the Alien for Christmas film. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That took a while to do. It was me learning how to paint backgrounds, establish some sense of color style. Stuff I had never had to do before because working at doing the Warner's work was just pencil to paper every day. Sure. So I never had any real true training in that. So it was really just by the seat of my pants coming up with how I wanted the backgrounds to look and all that stuff. I was so excited when I found out that Flash as a web tool could also be utilized as an ink and paint tool. And I could get it for relatively cheap. So went all in on it, had a great guy named Bob Rossetto who helped teach me the craft. And then I just went from there and just, a little bit each day to get it done. So, I mean, that much work on anything, by the time you get it, it's like, okay, it actually got done. Super satisfying to do. And it was what enabled me to travel around the world a little bit and do talks for kids and things like that in children's festivals. And so, there's some sacrifices doing that because, again, it takes tremendous time. You got to be dedicated. It's the only thing you're doing. And there were times where it was like a couple of months have gone by and I haven't even touched it. You need to take those breaks. But that is probably maybe the thing I'm most proud of so far.
Man.
Yeah, and the film looks great. So that'll be in the show notes as well, Alien for Christmas. So, it's only a few minutes long, but definitely check it out.
Yeah. So I will tell everybody where they can find you, where they can follow you, they can support what you're doing and see all the fun and cool work you're doing.
So you can find me at Dave Pryor 72 on all the social links. So I'm on mainly Instagram. You can find me on a Facebook art page, Tumblr, Twitter. But I would say Instagram if you really want to be part of my community.
Cool.
Have a Dave Pryor 72 at Blogspot. So if you want to see more detail, which I'll sometimes post longer explanations for some of the pieces I've done. And you can email me at davepryor72@gmail.com.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but 72 relates to how many projects you have going at any one time.
That is correct. Yes.
Go check out Dave's work. It's incredible. It's super fun, and you will not. He is a fun and really really cool follow. So make sure you do that before this episode is done. Would you do us a favor and help us pick our tokens so that we know what we're talking about next week?
Okay.
So up next, we're gonna draw some tokens. The tokens portion every week is when we get to figure out exactly what our categories are. The next week, we pick our topics based on those categories, and that's how our master category episode goes. I've got the tokens right here, Dave. As you can see, they're very real. I'm going to put them face down on my desk, shuffle them up, and you give me a number between 1 and 3, and you'll be picking for Patrick.
Sounds good. I pick number 3.
Number 3,
Unexpected.
Definitively. Patrick, you've got art and design, my friend.
I'll take it.
And pick 1 or 2, and you'll pick for me.
I pick number 1.
TV and film, and that means, Luke, you get toys and games.
Yay.
Congratulations. You did it. You did it absolutely the right way. Thank you so much, Dave, for being on the show. Again, it's been a long time coming. We have a ton more questions to talk about with your breadth of experience and wisdom. And you're just such a cool dude. Go check out Dave's stuff. Give him a follow. While you're at it, follow M of One Podcast on all the different socials. You can find us at mofonepodcast.com, where you can find show notes and links to everything we just talked about in this episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's right below us, so you have no excuse. Go click on all that stuff. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/M1podcast and throwing a couple bucks in the proverbial bucket. That helps us out so much. Another way you can support the show is going to shop.mofonepodcast.com, where you can get a cool hat, shirt, mug, or pin, and support the show and show everyone your love of the show while you're doing it. And then you can also be a part of the conversation. We are on Discord. You can go to mofonepodcast.com/family to join the conversation with all sorts of incredible, talented artists from all different facets, all different industries, each and every day from all around the world. It's an incredible community. We would love for you to join us. Like, subscribe, share, follow, all the things that you do on videos. You know how this thing goes. And on podcasts, rating and reviewing is incredibly helpful. We don't have to tell you that. Maybe we do. It's free, and it shows your support in a really, really cool and fun way. I think that's it for this episode, though. We're going to get out of here. I'm Andrew.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Luke.
I'm Dave.
Peace out.
Bye.
Hold on to your butts.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.